I still remember the morning Michael made me that birthday card. He was 9, all elbows and knees, sitting at our kitchen table, with his tongue poking out in concentration. Macaroni pieces scattered everywhere as he glued them into the shape of a wonky flower. "It's beautiful, sweetheart," I told him, and his gap-toothed grin could have lit up the whole house. "Happy birthday, Mama," he said, presenting it with flour-dusted hands. We'd been baking cookies together since dawn. Chocolate chip, his favorite to steal dough from when he thought I wasn't looking. Those were the golden days. Just the two of us, after his father walked out when Michael was 7. Money was tight, but love was abundant. I worked double shifts at the hospital, came home exhausted, but there was always energy for bedtime stories, for helping with homework, for teaching him to crack eggs without getting shells in the bowl. When my husband Robert died of a heart attack 10 years later, Michael was the one who held me together. He was 19 then, strong and gentle, driving 3 hours from college every weekend just to sit with me. "We'll get through this together, Mom," he'd say, making me tea the way I'd taught him as a child. "You and me against the world. Remember." I believed him. I believed in us. The house Robert and I bought when Michael was 9 wasn't much. A small brick home with peeling paint and stubborn plumbing. But it was ours. Every mortgage payment represented another graveyard shift I'd worked. Every repair another vacation I'd skipped to save money. The kitchen walls held years of Michael's artwork, his height marked in pencil on the doorframe, our life together embedded in every corner. When Michael brought Clara home during his senior year, I wanted so badly to love her. She was beautiful, blonde hair that caught the light just right, clothes that looked expensive even when they weren't. But there was something in her eyes, a hardness that made me uneasy. "She makes me better. Mom," Michael insisted after I gently voiced my concerns. "She has goals, ambitions. She's going to help me build something real." I bit my tongue and smiled. If she made my son happy, I would find a way to love her too. Clara moved in after they graduated, and immediately, things began to change. She had opinions about everything: the outdated wallpaper, the ancient appliances, the way I organized the kitchen. "Mrs. Harper," she'd say with that practiced smile. "You know, feng shui says having so many knickknacks blocks positive energy." My collection of ceramic birds, gifts from Robert over the years, suddenly became clutter to be hidden away. "Maybe we could put these somewhere less prominent," she suggested, boxing them up before I could respond. Money became a constant source of tension. Clara had student loans, credit card debt from what she called necessary professional wardrobe investments. She worked part-time at a marketing firm, but was always stressed about bills. "Your mother doesn't understand modern living," I overheard her tell Michael one evening. "We need our own space, our own life. She's stuck in the past." Michael's responses grew shorter, less defensive of me. "She's been through a lot. Clara, give her time to adjust." "Adjust to what? This is our home now, too. Our home. Not my home where I'd raised him, where I'd grieved my husband, where every corner held decades of memories. Our home." The first time Michael didn't defend me, I felt something crack inside my chest. It was small, barely noticeable, like a hairline fracture in a favorite mug that you hope won't spread. But cracks always spread, given time. When they announced Claire was pregnant, I was overjoyed. A grandchild, new life to fill our home with laughter again. But Clara's pregnancy brought new rules. "The baby will need the spare room," she announced at dinner. "We'll need to convert it into a nursery." The spare room, my sewing room, where I'd made Michael's Halloween costumes, mended his school clothes, created quilts for church fundraisers. "Of course," I said. "Whatever the baby needs." "Where will you put your sewing things?" Michael asked. Clara answered before I could. "Maybe it's time to downsize some hobbies anyway. More space means less stress." I moved my sewing machine to the corner of my bedroom and told myself it was temporary. Little Lily was born on a snowy February morning, and holding her for the first time. I forgot all about spare rooms and ceramic birds. She was perfect. Tiny fingers that gripped mine with surprising strength, eyes that seemed to see straight into my soul. "She loves her grandma," Michael said softly, watching me rock her. For a moment, it felt like the old days, my son and I, united in love for this precious new life. But Clara had different ideas about childcare. "I've read that too much holding spoils babies," she'd say, taking Lily from my arms. "We need to establish good habits early." When baby number 2 came, sweet little Tommy, the house felt crowded in ways that had nothing to do with space. It was crowded with unspoken resentments, with Clara's constant suggestions about better ways to do things, with Michael's growing silence when she criticized me. "Maybe we need a bigger place," Clara said one evening when Tommy was 6 months old. "Somewhere with a proper layout, more modern." That's when they came to me with their proposition. "There's this perfect house. Mom," Michael said, his eyes bright with hope. "Good schools, a big yard, room for everyone, but we're short on the down payment." "How much do you need?" I asked, though I already knew what my answer would be. The number they gave me represented most of my savings, nearly everything Robert and I had put away for our retirement years. But seeing Michael's face, imagining my grandchildren playing in that big yard. "I'll wire it tomorrow," I said. I didn't ask to be on the deed. I didn't want them to feel burdened by obligation. Just a home for the babies. I told myself, they'll know what this means. But they didn't know, or maybe they chose not to see. I was folding towels in the kitchen when I heard them. Their voices were hushed, but I'd lived long enough to know when people were trying not to be heard. "You need to say something," Clara whispered, her tone tight with impatience. "Your mother can't live with us forever. She's not helping. She just takes up space." "She raised me," Michael mumbled, but his voice lacked conviction. "That's not the point," Clara snapped. "We've got bills, stress, and she just sits there all day. She's dead weight." I froze. The towel in my hand slipped onto the counter. Dead weight. I stood there for a moment, letting the words sink in. Dead weight. After 3 years of paying half their mortgage in secret, after raising their children while they worked, cooking their meals, washing their clothes, mending their broken things without ever being asked to. Dead weight. "I heard you," I said softly. Stepping into the doorway, Clara flinched. Michael turned, eyes wide. "Mom, that's not what she meant," he stammered. "It is," I said quietly. "You just didn't think I'd be listening." They said nothing. I walked back to the kitchen, folded the last towel with shaking hands, and placed it on the stack. My heart beat steady and slow, but something fundamental had shifted inside me. I had lived through far worse than words. But some words, once spoken, can never be taken back. That night at dinner, I said nothing about what I'd heard. But I watched them differently now, saw how Clara's eyes rolled when I offered to help with dishes, how Michael looked away when she made her little comments about my outdated cooking methods. "Grandma, will you read to me tonight?" Lily asked, tugging on my sleeve. "Maybe Grandma's tired." "Sweetie," Clara interjected before I could answer. "She's getting older. We don't want to wear her out." Lily's face fell. "But she always reads to me." "Not tonight," Clara said firmly. I excused myself and went to my room, the converted laundry room with no windows, just a mattress on the floor and my few remaining possessions. I sat on the edge of the bed and looked around at what my life had become, a guest in a house I'd helped buy, caring for children who were kept from me, living with people who saw me as a burden. For the first time in 3 years, I cried. The next evening, I was serving soup, lentil, Michael's favorite once upon a time when my arthritis betrayed me. The bowl slipped from my trembling hands just as I set it down, hot broth soaking the tablecloth and dripping onto Clara's lap. "Seriously," Clara hissed, jumping up as the liquid splashed her expensive blouse. "I'm sorry," I murmured, reaching for a napkin. "My hands, they're not what they used to be, before I could move." She slapped my hand away, hard. Then she slapped my face. It wasn't the sting that hurt. It was the silence that followed. Michael just stood there. He didn't yell, didn't ask her what she thought she was doing. He just looked at me, then looked away. In that moment, I realized he wouldn't defend me, not even against this. I touched my cheek, feeling the heat where her palm had struck. Lily and Tommy stared with wide, frightened eyes. "Mommy," Lily whispered, "why did you hit Grandma?" "Sometimes adults have accidents too." "Sweetheart," Clara said, her voice artificially sweet. "Grandma understands." But I didn't understand. I couldn't understand how the son I'd raised with such love could stand by and watch his wife strike his mother. I couldn't understand how a woman could hit an elderly person and then smile at her children as if nothing had happened. The sound of the front door opening broke the awful silence. Mom Ann's voice, my daughter, my youngest, the one I hadn't seen in over a year. She stood at the threshold, suitcase still in hand, face stunned. She had just come from signing her divorce papers. I knew this because she had called me 3 days ago, crying so hard she couldn't breathe. She saw my red cheek, the spilled soup, the way I was holding myself together with nothing but dignity. Then she saw Clara, and her face transformed. The slap echoed through the room. Clara staggered back, stunned. "You touch my mother again, and I will break both your hands," Anne said through clenched teeth. Michael jumped up. "What the hell, you don't live here. You don't get to come in here and act like some hero." Anne turned slowly, her eyes blazing. "You let your wife hit Mom and said nothing. You let her call Mom a burden and just stood there like a coward. She's not helping us," he snapped. "She just takes up space, just like you, a divorced parasite who ran back to her mother the second life got hard." Anne recoiled like he'd hit her, too. "You're just like her," he spat, gesturing at Clara. "Both of you, useless." That's when I stepped between them. "Enough," I said. They both froze. I looked at Anne, her face still flushed with anger and hurt. "You're not useless." Then I turned to Michael, this stranger wearing my son's face. "And you're not my son anymore." His mouth opened, but nothing came out. I walked away, sat in my chair by the window, the one they said I stared out of like a ghost. But I wasn't a ghost. I was very much alive, and I was done. There was a time I believed that giving would guarantee love, that the more you sacrificed, the more you'd be cherished. I believed that loyalty, when paid forward in silence, would one day echo back in warmth. I was wrong. That night, I sat by the window until the house grew quiet. The Florida humidity pressed against the glass, and somewhere in the distance, I could hear the ocean calling. I thought about the house I'd given up, the small brick home with the peeling porch and stubborn plumbing. I thought about the porch swing where Robert and I used to sit in the evenings, planning Michael's future. I thought about the daffodils I'd planted every spring, how they came back year after year, faithful and bright, all of it gone, sold so Michael and Clara could have their perfect house, their perfect life. But what had I received in return? A room with no windows, meals eaten in silence, the knowledge that my presence was tolerated, not welcomed. I had confused being needed with being loved. I had mistaken duty for devotion. The realization wasn't bitter. It was clarifying, like finally putting on glasses and seeing the world in sharp focus. I was 73 years old. How many years did I have left? 5, 10, 15 if I was lucky. Did I want to spend them apologizing for taking up space, shrinking myself smaller and smaller until I disappeared entirely, or did I want to live? The answer came with the sunrise. On Tuesday morning, I called the bank. It wasn't dramatic. I didn't cry, didn't even raise my voice. I simply confirmed what I already knew, that my name was still listed as the payee on the monthly mortgage payments, even though I wasn't on the deed. "Yes, Mrs. Harper," the woman said, her voice polite but puzzled. "It looks like you've been making partial payments since July 2020 and also several lump sums over the years." "That's correct," I said. "And I'd like to stop those payments. Effective today." Some days. Silence. "I'd also like all future communications and financial documents redirected to the homeowners. Michael and Clara Harper. Of course, I can finalize that request today. Please do. And email me a copy of the confirmation." I hung up, opened my laptop, and printed the letter the bank sent just 2 hours later. I folded it neatly and slid it into an envelope with the final receipt of my last payment. That afternoon, I packed. Not everything, just what mattered. A week's worth of clothes, my birth certificate, my pension papers, the recipe box with my mother's handwriting, and the photo of Michael and Anne as toddlers, their mouths sticky with watermelon. I left the ceramic birds. They belonged to a different version of me, one who thought love could be earned through perfect behavior. I made dinner that evening like always. Lentil soup, fresh bread, a simple salad. I set the table, placed 3 plates out, and in the center, beside the salt shaker, I laid the envelope. When they arrived home, I greeted them like nothing had changed. Clara walked in first, pulling off her heels and dropping them on the floor as usual. Michael followed, his phone still pressed to his ear. Dinner was quiet except for the clink of cutlery and the ticking wall clock. When the plates were nearly empty, I reached for the envelope and placed it between them. "What's that?" Clara asked without looking up. I wiped my hands on my napkin. "That is the last mortgage payment I will ever make." She blinked. "Excuse me. I called the bank this morning," I said calmly. "I told them to send all future communications to the legal homeowners. You too. From now on, all responsibility is yours." Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. Michael finally looked up from his plate. "Mom, I heard you last week," I interrupted. "In the living room." I turned to Clara. "You said I was dead weight." Clara scoffed. "That's not—" "Yes," I said firmly. "It is. And now I'm removing the weight." Michael's face turned red, his eyes dropping to the table. "I've paid for this house for 3 years." I continued. "Half the mortgage, the down payment, groceries, repairs. I've cooked your meals, raised your children, stayed quiet when you rolled your eyes and turned away." I reached down and lifted my small suitcase from beside my chair, setting it upright. "But now the giving is done." Clara stood up, her voice rising. "You can't just leave. What about the kids? You can't just drop this on us." "I can, Fa," I said, "and I am." Michael looked like a boy again, one who'd done something wrong and didn't know how to undo it. "Mom, please, let's talk." I turned to him, my son who had become a stranger. "You let her slap me," I said, low and calm. "You let her call me names, and when your sister stood up for me, you called her trash. You stood behind her every time, even when you knew she was wrong." His eyes filled with tears, but not a word came out. "I'll be gone in the morning," I said. "You'll get the keys back. You can convert the guest room, do whatever you like." "Where will you go?" he whispered. I smiled. "Where I'm not dead weight." I left before sunrise, the way people do when they're not looking back. At 5:40 a.m., I rolled my little suitcase down the street to the bus stop, the wheels clicking softly against the pavement. The morning air was thick with possibility. A neighbor watering his lawn waved. I waved back, knowing he had no idea I was disappearing. The Greyhound bus was half full, vinyl seats cracked with time. The air stale but not unkind. I sat near the window and watched the city shrink behind me, the place where I had lived like a shadow in someone else's house. I didn't cry. There was nothing left to grieve. I rode through Georgia's sleepy hills into the warm breath of the South. Hours passed in contemplative silence. I ate saltines from my coat pocket, wrote a few lines in my journal, then stared out at endless fields. I thought about Anne, the daughter I hadn't seen in over a year. She lived in Sarasota now. Last time we spoke, she was whispering through tears, "I think I'm done. Mom, I just don't know how to leave him." I knew that voice. I had once used it myself. When I finally arrived, the air in Florida felt different, softer somehow, even in the heat. I stepped off the bus into sunlight and possibility, my suitcase bumping behind me like an old friend. Anne lived in a modest apartment complex just outside town. I walked the last 2 blocks. Her building beige with chipped railings and a cracked sidewalk. I climbed the stairs to her unit, knocked twice, and waited. When she opened the door, her breath caught. "Mom," she whispered. She looked thinner than I remembered. Her eyes tired, her lips swollen beneath a faint smear of concealer. She'd always been good at covering bruises. She wasn't wearing her wedding ring. Neither was I. I realized I'd stopped wearing mine years ago. Not from any lack of love for Robert, but because Clara had once commented that older women with jewelry look like they're trying too hard. We just looked at each other, 2 women worn thin from being quiet too long. Then she stepped forward and wrapped her arms around me. No words, just arms, just warmth, just the kind of embrace you only give when something inside you breaks open. I held her for what felt like hours. We didn't need to explain. We knew. We had both survived houses where love had conditions, where silence was safer than truth, where the cost of staying was your own reflection. Inside, the apartment was small, 1 bedroom, second-hand furniture, the air conditioner rattling like it might give up at any moment, but it was clean, lived in, real. "I was just making tea," Anne said, wiping her face. I nodded, sat down at her kitchen table, and let her pour me a cup. There were no questions like, "Why are you here?" or "What happened?" She just placed the cup in front of me, sat across from me, and reached for my hand. And we sat like that. No explanations, no justifications, just 2 women who had finally come home to each other. Anne didn't speak much the first few days. She moved quietly around the apartment like she was always bracing for something, for someone. She flinched when her phone buzzed, kept her back to windows, and at night, even in her own home, she locked every door twice. I didn't push. I folded laundry while she worked late shifts at a local restaurant. I made soup and left notes by her coffee mug. I swept the floor and waited. One night, as rain tapped gently against the window and we sat together on her worn couch, she finally said the words I knew were buried deep in her chest. "He called me garbage," she whispered, staring at the floor like she couldn't bear to see my face. "Not just when we fought, all the time. When I forgot to take out the trash, when dinner was late, when I spoke too softly, too loudly, when I breathed wrong." Her hands were clasped in her lap, knuckles white. "He took my car keys last month, said I didn't deserve to leave, that if I left, no one would take me back, that even my own mother wouldn't want me." She looked up at me then, eyes filled with something far deeper than sadness. Was he right? My throat tightened. I reached for her hand. It was cold, trembling, so different from the small fingers I used to braid hair for before school. "He's wrong," I said firmly. "He was always wrong." That night, we made a plan. Not just for her to leave, but for both of us to start over. We found a small apartment above a seafood market, one street over from the beach. The paint was chipped, the plumbing temperamental, but the windows caught the sunrise like they were built to remember beauty. "Can we really do this?" Anne asked, standing in the doorway with the lease in her hand, eyes shining with something I hadn't seen in years: hope. "We already are," I said. We moved in a week later with only what we needed: a few bags of clothes, a kettle, 2 folding chairs, and a second-hand sofa that smelled faintly of cinnamon. We didn't bring the past with us, just the parts of ourselves we were still learning to love. Anne started selling handmade jewelry online, something she'd once done as a hobby in college. I helped with shipping and packaging, learning the little codes and tools she used. We set up a small corner of the living room with boxes, twine, and tissue paper. Every sale felt like a small victory. A piece of her independence delivered. I started baking again. Just small batches at first: oatmeal cookies, banana bread, butter rolls. We posted a few photos online, and within weeks, we were taking local orders from neighbors and tourists. They called it Mother and Daughter Goods. The name stuck. We didn't make much, but we didn't need much. Each morning, I rose with the light, brewed strong tea, and sat by the open window with my journal. I wrote not to remember, but to release. Pages and pages of everything I had held back. The letter arrived on a Tuesday. Real mail with a stamp and a little heart drawn next to my name. It was from Lily, written in her careful 7-year-old handwriting. "Dear Grandma, I hope you are happy. I miss you. I miss the smell of your cookies. I miss your hugs. I told Mommy and Daddy that I miss you." Mommy cried. Daddy went outside. "I hope I see you again. Love, Lily." There was a drawing of us holding hands, 2 stick figures in front of what looked like a house. She had drawn a big smile on my face. I held the letter for a long time. The edges crumpled from her small fingers, her handwriting uneven like she had tried very hard not to mess it up. The S in hugs was backward, her G in Grandma too big for the line, but it was her voice, clear and small and piercing like only a child's can be. I didn't cry at first. I just breathed, sat in the sunspot on the floor near the window, and let the warmth settle into my bones while I read it again. Slowly, line by line. Then I folded it, pressed it gently against my heart, and put it on the windowsill where the morning light could touch it. That evening, I wrote back, "Dear Lily, I miss you too. Sweetheart, my cookies still smell the same. I've started growing basil and lavender, and sometimes I bake cinnamon bread just for the smell of it. The beach here is soft and quiet, and the seagulls are pushy little things that always want your toast. I love you always. Grandma." I sealed the envelope and added a pressed flower inside, a dried violet Anne and I had picked on a walk. I didn't mention the house or her parents. That wasn't her burden to carry. The phone rang on a Thursday evening while Anne was stirring soup, and I was clipping dead leaves from a basil plant. The number flashed on the screen. Familiar area code. A number I hadn't seen in months. I almost didn't answer. "Grandma, are you okay?" Lily's voice, small and frightened. "I'm fine." "Sweetheart," I said, my heart tightening. There was a pause. Then, "Grandma, Mom and Dad they're scared. The bank sent a letter. They said something about foreclosure." I sat down slowly. "Dad's been crying," she continued, barely audible. "I heard them fighting last night. He said they're going to lose the house." Another pause. "He said it was your house first." The phone clicked. She'd handed it off. "Mom," Michael's voice, shaky, older than I remembered. He hadn't called me Mom since the day I walked out. "I'm sorry," he said, all in one breath. I should have stopped her. I should have said something. I was scared, and stupid, and I thought we had time. I thought, "Why are you calling me now?" I asked. Not cold, just quiet. He didn't respond right away. "I need help," he finally said. "We need help. They're going to take the house. I tried to fix it, but it's too late. And I know I don't deserve to ask, but please, come back. We can make space for you again, Clara and I. I laughed once, soft and sad. He stopped talking. I took a deep breath, looked around the little apartment that smelled of lavender and lemon, where the walls were thin, but the air was warm. "Michael," I said gently, "do you remember the day Clara called me dead weight?" His breath caught. "Yes." "Do you remember what you did?" Silence. "Nothing," I answered for him. "You did nothing, and then you called your sister a leech. You stood by while I was humiliated, and now, months later, you remember I exist because the bank does too." He sobbed once. "Mom, please." I closed my eyes. "I was a burden to you then," I said. "But I'm not anymore." And then I said it. The sentence I'd been saving, not for revenge, but for clarity. "I used to carry that house. Now I carry myself." He sniffled. "What do I tell the kids?" I smiled, though he couldn't see it. "Tell them their grandmother is doing just fine. And maybe one day, when they grow up, they'll understand what you didn't." I hung up. No goodbye, no promises, just peace. Some mornings, Anne and I walk barefoot on the beach. She always carries her sandals even though she never wears them. I bring my journal, though some days I don't write a word. We just walk side by side, letting the tide nibble at our toes, letting the wind take what's left of the past. There's a rhythm to the ocean that feels like forgiveness, not for others, but for ourselves. Anne is healing in her own way. She laughs now, not too loud, but real. She sings when she washes dishes. Her bruises have faded, though the memory of them still lives in her eyes sometimes. And me, I plant herbs on the balcony. I send handwritten recipes to strangers who follow our baking page. I sleep without worry. I make tea in silence and enjoy every sip. Last month, we took a weekend trip to Asheville, driving in Anne's old Honda with the windows down and the radio playing songs from my youth. We stayed in a little bed and breakfast, ate apple pie for breakfast, and bought silly postcards we'll never send. "I can't remember the last time I felt this free," Anne said as we sat on the porch swing, watching the mountains turn purple in the evening light. "Neither can I admitted. We've talked about traveling more, maybe up the coast to see the lighthouses, or west to visit those lavender fields in Oregon. Small adventures for two women who spent too many years making themselves small. If someone has ever called you a burden, if they sighed when you entered the room or looked past you when you spoke, if they rolled their eyes when you asked for something small, I want you to stop whatever you're doing and hear me now. You are not too much. You are not in the way. You are not the reason things fell apart. You are not dead weight. You are breath. You are memory. You are presence. You are the one who stayed up when no one else would, the one who paid bills no one saw, who kept the house warm, the meals ready, the doors open, even when your own heart was breaking. You are a library of love and labor. Every wrinkle is a story, every scar a receipt, every silence you've held a vault of strength. This world wouldn't survive without mothers like you. You are not useless. You are not expired. You are not furniture to be shuffled when it's convenient. You are a witness to time, a vessel of wisdom, a survivor of silence. And if they've forgotten that, let them. Let them believe what they want to believe. Let them squirm beneath the weight of their ingratitude. Let them sit in the house you once cleaned, Eat off the dishes you once bought. Breathe the air you once made safe. And wonder why it all feels cold now. Because when a woman like you walks out of a room, really walks, she takes the warmth with her. You don't owe anyone your silence. You don't owe anyone your savings. You don't owe anyone your old age. And you certainly don't owe anyone your forgiveness if they haven't earned it. But if you do forgive, do it for yourself. So you can sleep with peace. So your hands no longer shake. So your breath no longer catches when you remember what was said behind your back. Do it so you can laugh again. Not the polite kind, but belly deep, shoulder-shaking laughter that no one can take from you. Do it so you can sing in the kitchen again, dance barefoot in the hallway, write letters to grandchildren who remember the scent of your cookies even when their parents don't deserve to. Do it because your story isn't over, because your last chapter hasn't been written, because you are still here, and there is nothing heavier than a woman who's carried the past and still chooses to stand tall. You don't need to shout. Wisdom doesn't shout. Wisdom waits and remembers. And when the time is right, wisdom speaks. So speak. Even if it's just in your own journal. Even if it's only with your actions. Say the words you never thought you could. I am not invisible. I am not yours to use. I am not a mistake to be tolerated. You are not a guest in your own life. You are the author of it. So write endings that make you proud. Write boundaries that hold. Write silence that speaks louder than any insult they whispered behind closed doors. Because the truth is this, some people never apologize. Some people never admit what they did. But some people live with the echo of your footsteps walking away. And that echo will be louder than anything you could have screamed. And as I write this, sitting by my window that faces the sea, with the salt air filling my lungs and Anne humming in the kitchen, I know that I made the right choice. Not because it was easy, but because it was mine. I used to carry that house, those people, their expectations and disappointments. Now I carry myself, and I have never felt lighter. This morning, Anne and I are planning another trip, maybe Tennessee this time, to see the wildflowers. We'll pack light, drive slow, stop wherever catches our fancy. We're in no hurry anymore. We have time. We have each other. We have ourselves. And for the first time in years, that feels like enough.